Hello, Brian. How are you?
Hello, citizens.
Hey, guys.
No. I didn't bring my pen. You're a smart guy, nice guy, thank you. The camera is in there.
Right there in the corner.
Oh, wait.
What are you looking right at now?
Huh?
The black thing.
Yeah, I guess I can't.
Can you look in the door, see the screen?
Like a person. Yes, how are you? Yeah.
We missed you the last couple
Missed.
meetings.
Yeah.
You doing, Tom?
How are you?
I do, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Hey. Wait, a lot of time.
You got here just before I switched this tiny chair with the higher one.
So close.
They're so far away. That'd be a little
Same, that's good, that's good.
This is Bill's proposed. And he's already forwarded to the next one.
Well, since we spend all our nights together, will you just marry me?
Right? What would your wife
That'd
think?
be nice this week.
What would my wife think?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I guess it's not a good idea.
They might both be relieved.
It's always possible.
Finally.
What's the hum?
Notice that?
It's disappeared.
Is that the emergency generator?
Maybe. It's coming back. Going away.
I'm so deaf and I have a cold that I could really barely hear.
You can't hear it?
Bad combo. It's good the mics are hot.
That's what it is. Yeah.
We just have to add bills and claims on the table.
Is there a way to turn down the volume on one mic, or are they all on the same?
I don't think I can just turn down the volume on.
Okay, well, we'll use that one tonight, I think.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Rebecca is not feeling well. She will not be here. So we are adding one thing to this agenda, bills and claims. We can add that as a final item.
Request one change.
Yep.
Since there are people here for item 19, can we move that up earlier in the meeting?
Sure.
I'll keep you over.
Let's move that up.
Make
Well-
that number 9.
Yeah, we'll move that before number 9, after the consent agenda. And I didn't have any other changes. You guys like to make a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Okay,
Aye.
all in favor, right? Aye. Announcements, so we have the New Paltz microgrid presentation. There's going to be a public update on that project, and that's taking place next Tuesday at 6 p.m. We encourage anyone interested in coming to Village Hall. The project manager, Michael Burr, who's based in Minnesota with the Microgrid Institute, is visiting New Paltz and wanted to, in addition to having several meetings during the day, also wanted to provide some update to our community publicly, and that's going to take place between 6 and 7 p.m. before the Village Planning Board meeting. And then another presentation will take place the very next day at 7 p.m., also at Village Hall, and that's just a public update on the proposed joint town-village municipal center we have been discussing for Veterans Drive. I had a couple of other announcements that I wanted to add. I was going to encourage everyone in the village to keep their fingers crossed as we await CFA news regarding the 3 grants that we applied for. One of them related to small cities, the $600,000 grant involving the DEC consent order regarding sewer. The other was a $100,000 grant related to trying to once and for all identify the various projects that our village has facing us regarding sewer. So the thinking is that study would pay for trying to truly wrap our arms around the various DEC consent orders regarding sewer. And then the third grant that we hope to receive favorable news about is having to do with the Millbrook Preserve. So that's approximately a $200,000 grant regarding bog bridges and low impact trails and some other things that would be useful within the Millbrook Preserve. The county director of planning asked that we formally announce that the county is seeking the $490,000 from the New York Rising program that would go towards the construction of the Carmine-Liberta Bridge. So we've discussed that a few times, and there's an application that will go in the middle of this month, and then anyone interested in commenting on that, and this information will be on the village website, anyone interested in commenting on that application regarding this $490,000 for the bridge project can do so by sending a note to Dennis Doyle, the Director of County Planning, by the 17th. My third and final additional announcement has to do with meters. It's village law that we provide free parking on 3 sections of our downtown shopping area: Main Street below Prospect, North Front Street between Main and North Chestnut, and then North Chestnut between North Front and Main. So free parking, but this year, because we're not using plastic bags, we wrestled hard with other approaches to making sure it was clear that these parking meters noted that folks didn't have to put money in them, so there'll be little red cards inside the window on both the street-facing and sidewalk-facing sign that say, "Happy Holidays, free parking." That's it as far as announcements. Public comment. Does anyone here for public comment? All right. So moving on, this is a presentation that grant writer Mark Blauer is going to make for us, and this has to do with the sewer project. We received grant money to update sewer lines here on Plattekill Avenue, and this is a requirement as far as receiving that grant money, where Mark will summarize the project, and then we'll have any questions about the project.
Thank you, Mayor. The mayor noted that we have 2 pending applications that relate to the ongoing DEC consent order. For those not familiar, we are dealing as a village with an open-ended consent order that relates to the lawsuit brought against the village back, perhaps about 12 years ago now, related to the fact that the antiquated sanitary sewer system, due to the excessive I&I, infiltration and inflow, was leading to overflows at the treatment plant and pollution to the Wallkill River. The village has used a combination of its own funds and grant funds wherever available to try to deal with that. In essence, what the DEC tells us each year is that we must make progress on replacing old sanitary sewer mains to continue reducing the I&I that affects the plant, which affects the river. And if we don't get grants, you're spending it out of your own tax dollars. Wherever possible, we're trying to get grants to lighten the burden on the taxpayers. That's why we're talking here tonight. If you're familiar with the sign outside, you'll see there's a sign announcing a grant that we received for Plattekill Avenue Sewer. That project was done this summer. The project's complete. we received $600,000. We had a public hearing at the beginning of this process when we were applying back in 2000, I think at the time it was 2012. And that hearing talked about the intent to apply for funds. We are required at the end of a project to have a second hearing. This is it, a performance hearing. The purpose of the performance hearing is to ask people what they think about what we did. You're not going to see anything right now. You're going to see manholes. You're going to see a repaved street. You're going to see, if you live on that street, you're going to realize that your sanitary sewer service, which was interrupted for a while this summer, is now back to what it was. The real impact is at the sewage treatment plant, where during heavy storms we get less infiltration, less inflow into the system. We are doing this in part because if we don't do this, we're going to be fined. We can be fined up to $35,000 a day. So we have to keep showing progress. This then leads into what we're waiting for tomorrow. We're waiting on 2 applications through the consolidated funding application process to continue keeping the DEC happy. One is $600,000 to replace more sewer mains. The second one is $100,000 to do what amounts to a comprehensive study of where the worst I&I problems are in the village system. One solution is to replace every last sewer main, but that's upwards of 20 miles of sewer mains. That's not practical. What is practical is to try to identify by televising where the worst problems are, and then to cherry pick those activities that would get the greatest I&I reduction benefit with future grants, for example, whether it be the Small Cities Program, the USDA, the EFC, whatever we can get. The other thing I put into the application very specifically is things I heard at the various meetings in the past. There's 2 ways of dealing with I&I: replace the sewer main or make sure the water never gets into the sewer main in the first place, which is, for example, some of the green infrastructure things that we've been talking about. Keeping water away from manholes, keeping water away from locations where it can infiltrate into the sanitary sewer system. And whether that is rain gardens or any number of other activities such as permeable pave or something that would get the water off the ground into the groundwater before it has a chance to pour into the sanitary sewer system at vulnerable locations. So what you're seeing here is that we're finishing and we're hoping to continue. The $600,000 project on this street is done. The money's been spent. We got our grant money. We're ready to close that out. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have the next increment of this activity, which is continuing to replace sanitary sewer mains where most effective. And at the same time, saving the taxpayers' money and keeping ahead of the fines that could be levied by DEC if we don't continue. So the purpose here tonight is to satisfy the requirement of the Office of Community Renewal, which is our funding source, to have this second public hearing. Now, what I'm going to do with this preface is ask anybody in the public to give us their thoughts about what we've done, what we should do, anything they might want to say about Platico Avenue sewer main that we finished this year, especially if you live on the street. To make life simpler for for Ryan here, for his transcript, please identify who you are so he can write your name down. We'll provide the comments to the funding agency after this meeting. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Can I come speak?
Please come right up.
Hi, I'm Ellen Rocco. I live right across the street on Platico, and I would like to say a big thank you to the folks who actually did the work and our DPW. It was very unpleasant. It was noisy, it was dusty, it was hard getting in and out of driveways, and everybody bent over backwards to make it easier. And I really appreciated that enormously. So my comments are enormously positive and with great thanks.
Any other questions, comments about the project? You got one? Okay. I can also provide a related update. So the Village of New Paltz was also the recipient of a grant that allowed us to host an EPA session earlier this fall, and the focus was on green infrastructure. So we just received our report, or our draft report back from the EPA about that full-day discussion and its findings. So that will be useful information as we continue to look at green infrastructure solutions, especially as we look at master planning that the town and the village are looking at together. So, so much of the work that our outside consultants as well as our staff and village board does, that it all dovetails together. So we're done with that. We're going to move on to our next item. We have a presentation from our auditors. You want to sit here? You got to use a microphone.
We can just stand up here.
Okay. I'm going to get
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Kennedy. I'm a partner in the accounting firm O'Connor Davies. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Leslie Tillotson. She's an engagement manager for the audit of the village, and we're happy to be here tonight to convey the results of the audit for the fiscal year ended May 31st, 2015.
Thanks for coming.
Excuse me?
Thanks for coming.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you. So you should have several documents, actually 2 documents. You'll have the financial statement, and you'll have what's referred to as the communication of internal control related matters. I'll focus a little bit on the audit of the financial statements first. So the financial statements is this document. It's a pretty thick document. It's about 75, 76 pages. But there's a lot of things involved in that document. I guess the most important thing is our audit opinion. And our audit opinion, the opinion that we've rendered is what's referred to as an unmodified opinion. So it's also known as the auditor's clean opinion, if you will. And what it means is that your financial statements present fairly all the financial information in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. So some of the other things that is included in the report is MD&A, Management's Discussion and Analysis, and that's really an analysis from management's perspective of how the village did during the year. You're also going to have the fund level financial statements, and these are things like the general fund, which is the operating component of the village, the capital projects fund, certain other things like that. But then you also have what's known as the village-wide financial statements. So that includes capital assets, infrastructure of the village, and things like that, as well as all the liabilities associated with OPEB, everybody's heard the term, other post-employment benefits, and other obligations. Then you have the notes to the financial statements, and then finally you have 2 additional audit opinions referencing our audit of your expenditure of federal funds. You received just under $600,000 in federal funds, and that requires specific audit procedures and additional opinions. And I can share with you that both of those opinions were favorable as well regarding your use and regarding your internal controls. So maybe what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Leslie so she can talk a little bit about the general fund. Again, that's the thing that you can control, the operating unit of the village.
I'm going to refer you to page 47 of the audit report. This is the general fund's comparative schedule of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So at the start of the year, the village anticipated to use about $244,000 of fund balance. That was per the original budget. The final budget, there was a budget modification of about $300,000. So the village anticipated to use about $544,000 of fund balance. Actual results came in at a use of fund balance of about $222,000. So the village had a budgetary savings of about $322,000. And that consists of 2 components. You had excess revenues of about $59,000, and that was due to departmental income, had about $56,000 of excess revenues, and your fines and forfeitures had about $38,000 of excess revenues. Your total expenses, the final budget anticipated about $2.8 million. Actual results were 2.5, so you had about $263,000 of budget savings in your expenses, and that was due to about three functions. Your general support had about $58,000 of savings. The public safety had about $62,000 of savings, and your employee benefits had about $69,000 of savings. So if your beginning fund balance, the village had about 1.265 million. If you take away the $222,000 loss, it ended the year with $1,044,000 of fund balance. So that fund balance is broken down into, I'm going to refer you to page 46, 3 categories. You have restricted of about $148,000. You have what the board designated for next year's budget of about $223,000, and then your unassigned fund balance was about $673,000. And that is approximately 22% of your next year's budget, which is comparable to what the village had last year. And that's pretty favorable. It's usually looking between 20 and 30% is what the bond companies usually focus on. So you have a pretty healthy fund balance.
Anybody have any questions on some of the stuff that Leslie just talked about with respect to the fund balance? So the takeaway from that is that your fund balance unassigned is 22% of next year's expenditures, which is rather favorable to the village.
I appreciate that's within recommended parameters. I've always looked at fund balance as taxes that are collected for purposes that are not necessarily anticipated. It's extra money that's raised. That seems like a high amount to me, but I'm not in your business, so that 22 is in the sweet spot.
Yeah, I think it is. You know, if it's cutting it close, school districts, for instance, they don't want you exceeding 4% of next year's expenditures.
So that's why that seems high to me. Okay.
Exactly. But, you know, you've got a few other things going on here. I heard some sewer projects. So, you know, it's nice to have that cushion. And as long as you're not experiencing huge fluctuations in your tax rates, because that's really what you're trying to avoid. If you have to raise taxes, you want to be able to do it gradually. You don't want to be doing it in bursts and stuff. And then, you know, there's going to be other, sadly, Hurricane Sandys and things in the future. So it's nice to be able to have a little bit of something plugged away.
Thank you.
So maybe what I'll do is, thank you, Leslie, talk a little bit about this other thing that the document we have here is called Communication of Internal Control Matters Identified in the Audit. In this is what we refer to as management letter comments. So these are things that we noted during the audit. First of all, I'd have to inform you if there was anything known as a material weakness in internal control. As you can tell, that sounds awful. But we did not identify any material weaknesses in internal controls or significant deficiencies for that matter. We did identify certain best practices or other matters that we recommend. Maybe you want to say a few words about those, Leslie?
Okay, we had about five or six comments. The first comment was regarding the capital projects fund. The beginning fund balance didn't agree to the prior year audit report. It was out by about 1.7 million. So we had to make an audit entry to correct it. It was just a glitch in the finance system. Somehow when Nancy closed the books, something happened with the rollover, so it was corrected. The next comment is on the capital projects fund. Again, there was 2 inactive projects. Fire truck and a sanitary sewer system have been inactive for over a year. If they're closed, we just recommend the board pass a resolution to move the funds back to the fund that made the original contribution. There's not much left in the balances in those 2 projects. The next comment is regarding your community development fund, the loan program. There's about $32,000 of loans that have been outstanding for over 2 or 3 years. Again, we just recommend that the balances be reviewed. If it's deemed uncollectible, the board should pass a resolution to write those funds off. The next comment is on your encumbrances. Currently the village does not utilize an encumbrance system. I think it might be a glitch with the software. We recommend, if possible, it's easier to track the purchase orders. So if the village can implement, we're recommending the village implement an encumbrance system, if at all possible.
Obviously, we've shared these comments with your treasurer as well, and have gone through these as well.
And the last comment, I think this was a prior comment as well, regarding the tracking of your capital assets. It's currently maintained in an Excel spreadsheet. We recommend, if possible, either like a fixed asset module be implemented in the accounting software, or the village engage an appraisal company to come in and inventory all the capital assets. So you guys can have a real report to see what's out there. And because putting it in Excel, it can tend to cause errors with formulas. So I know Nancy kind of has a hard time. There's been some errors in the reports in the past. And that's it on the management comments. There is an addendum B, which is just informational.
Did anybody have any questions
Sorry.
on any of those comments?
Did you speak at all with Nancy about the comment about encumbrance? Because I think she was explaining that she prefers to manually handle that versus the functionality within the accounting software.
Yeah, we speak to her about it. Anytime you can.
But that was her response to your
anytime
recommendation.
Our feeling is just that anytime you can eliminate a manual procedure, you can avoid errors. That's really all it is.
I think I completely subscribe to that point of view as well. I think her response to that, though, is it requires a great deal of time, and to use the accounting software differently would not be the best use of her time. That was her response to that recommendation.
All those responses
But could you
are
just make sure
valid.
you're using the mic, just so we don't lose what you're saying?
Yeah, they're all valid answers, you know. We just, anytime there's a business risk, that's what we propose, and that's the purpose of this. At the end of the day, you may decide to do nothing about it because the cost benefit, the cost certainly could outweigh the benefit. So we respect that. But again, if it's a business risk, we'll bring it to your attention and, defer to management and the board on what they decide to do.
Thanks.
A question on the,
Yes, sir.
the listing of assets. I'm just a couple months into this role, not as familiar with the layout of the budget as I will be. Does it break down separate listings for the property value here at Plattekill Avenue in the building? Is that broken down? I know they wouldn't reflect market value right now, but how is that laid out?
No, what they do is they have values attributed, which is cost basis. So your capital assets are tracked for GAAP purposes based on historical cost. Now, sometimes the way the historical cost is determined, for municipalities is based on an appraisal that was conducted and discounted back those years. So I don't recall if that was the case here. Do you recall that? If they did if they had an appraisal previously and then discounted it back? It occurred a number of years ago.
Yeah.
So, but no,
Years
it's
ago.
intended to approximate cost, not fair value.
Just a small curiosity.
Good question. Yes, sir.
It was my understanding that one of, and by the way, I did read this management letter.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Look, can you guys both use the mic? Rebecca's not here, so we don't have the mic
Sure.
police, so.
It was my understanding that one of the issues was that we might not have an accurate accounting of what the assets are, never mind their assessed value. Do we know what all of our fixed assets are?
Well, there certainly is a listing of them. Includes infrastructure. You do have a capitalization policy that once it exceeds $1 threshold, you capitalize it. So we're aware that there is this, these capital assets. We're not aware that if it's 100%, we don't go
Accurate. You
back.
don't know, you can't tell if it's 100% accurate.
We look at it from an audit perspective. We're interested primarily in materiality. So, we'll look at it from a material. Is it materially off? That's what I'm really concerned with. And I think that when they conducted the appraisal, that's usually enough assurance for us. But we'll certainly bounce your concern to Nancy to see what her thoughts are, because we've not heard that before.
I was also interested in the encumbrance issue. I know that in my own past life, I would not have been able to function effectively without an effective encumbrance system, so that I knew what money I could not spend, even though it looked like it was sitting in the books. And while I think that our treasurer is a superb treasurer, I wonder if, in your opinion, we would not be benefited, in spite of her opinion, that we have an encumbrance system.
Well, again, it raises a business risk, so we bring it to your attention.
Yes.
She thinks that it would, the cost would outweigh the benefit. I wouldn't say that there's not a system. There is a system in place, I think you would agree too, of how she's tracking it, and we
Yeah.
understand it to be a manual process. If there was no system, I'd be a lot more concerned.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So we had a couple other small things that we'll share with you on the...
The addendum B in the management letter, this is just informational, future governmental accounting standards that are coming out. One of them affects the audit for next year. It's regarding the pension plan. It's similar to the OPEB liability that had to be recorded a couple years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. This is just going to affect the full accrual statement. It's not going to affect your fund level, your general fund. It's going to require another liability to be recorded for your share of the ERS and the ERS pension liability. So again, I mean, I'll be working with Nancy next year, and then this will be recorded on the full accrual statements.
It adds another 8 pages of notes. To
Yes,
the
and it
financial
adds
statements.
a lot more note disclosure.
So does it add a significant amount of concern for us about whether there's an additional liability of some sort that we have to take into account in advance of beginning the budget year?
No, it won't affect it doesn't affect the budget process.
Doesn't affect
No.
the budget. Thank you very much.
So one of the things when we have the opportunity to get together like this, there are certain required communications that we should share, and I'll go through those very briefly. I think everyone's aware what our responsibility as your independent auditors is to render an opinion on the fairness of your financial statements. And we have rendered an unmodified opinion. Again, that's also often referred to as the auditor's clean opinion. I would have to inform you if there were huge changes in the scope of our audit as a result of things we found, and that was not the case. Significant accounting policies, we'd have to inform you if there's any really aggressive things that they're doing that maybe they should take a less aggressive approach. Not the case. We'd have to inform you if there are any significant difficulties encountered in performing the audits, and we did not have any difficulties. We concluded the audit several months ago, and I apologize that we're here tonight instead of last month, but we moved my office on the night of your meeting last month. We'd have to inform you if we had any disagreements with management, and we did not. Lastly, with respect to audit independence, anytime Nancy or anyone has a question on implementation, certainly of new standards, or just accounting general questions, we encourage them to reach out to us. You don't get a bill every time you call us. We encourage that year-round dialogue, but in no way does that jeopardize our independence. We need to remain independent in appearance and in fact, and we are independent with respect to management and of the village. So that's what we wanted to share with you this evening. Anybody have any other questions for us or concerns, or I lose everything here?
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank
time
you.
this evening.
Good.
Next on our agenda, we have, it's listed as presentation from NICOM. It's actually information from a webinar that I believe both, at least Dennis and I participated in or listened in on. Pat Courtney Strong, who has been affiliated with NYSERDA, organized this, and it was basically a presentation from a group called Computel, some consultants, and what they offer is an audit of various electrical uses, and any savings that they identify, they receive a percentage of what they identify for municipalities like the Village of New Paltz if we were to choose to engage them as an auditor. I thought it was interesting, they actually spend a fair amount of time, and this is from their presentation, where they look at past billing to recoup past overcharges.
And that was not only from electric utilities, but also from cable system providers, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I think their abilities included several reviews of different service providers that we might be engaged in. Telephone, electric, natural gas, so, and cable TV, and obviously internet. But
They've also worked with a number of local municipalities, one of them being Kingston. I did not have a chance to reach out to anybody. Did you speak to anybody else for references?
I did speak with Jen Metzger who's on the Rosendale Town Council. And she spoke favorably, and she was working closely with Pat Courtney Strong to identify this consultant. And I feel like it's an example of a consultant that has been vetted by neighbors who we know and have had similar conversations with in the past.
Do we have any prior information about how we stack up relative in our various utility usage categories with other municipalities of approximately our size?
I do not know. That would be interesting to find out about. Even just going through the bills and claims yesterday, I came across a bill where we have a basic service charge of $35, and the address is, here at Village Hall, but there's no electrical use. So I sent back a note to our Treasurer's Department to ask, like, what exactly is this? I mean, this could be an example of, we're paying a $35 a month bill that we're getting from Central Hudson, but do we even need that service? So I wonder if that's the type of thing that this type of consultant would help us identify other examples like that.
Well, having attended the session or participated, did you two leave with a sense that it was something that we should participate in?
I did, and I actually reached out to the mayor to see if he felt the same way after seeing it. There's no risk. If they don't find anything that needs to be returned to us, it doesn't cost us anything. So, I mean, other than whatever, man hours it would take in the office to help coordinate the information going from point A to point B, I don't see any great burden on our office, and I believe the cost was 40% of whatever they recoup is what they keep. And then we would be able to identify what we're being overcharged on for future years, and in future years we wouldn't be giving back that 40%.
So they take their 40% out of
No.
Anything that they recoup.
Well,
but forever?
That
or
wasn't
just for
exactly
that?
my understanding of how they're compensated.
Computel audit services offered at the reduced contingency fee rate of 40% of recoveries with all resulting savings or increased revenues yours to keep. No recoveries, no fees.
Right, so they're looking to be paid 40% of any recoveries that they identify. But I guess my question was, I'm curious what their regular rate is, because it seems like that was their special offer for today's participants. That's how it's described in our presentation. But
Lucky us.
yeah.
So the thinking is they identify and take 40% of the savings, but then for the next year, we just would have those savings forever. That's the idea. Okay, I get it.
So it feels like Dennis and I were comfortable with the presentation, and I also feel comfortable that this came through kind of known channels in terms of Pat Courtney Strong and Jen Metzger. So I'm very interested in moving forward and engaging this consultant to try to help us identify these potential savings.
Well, I would say if it doesn't cost us any money to do so, and if there's potential savings, I would be willing to move forward on this even without a second discussion if you're comfortable with that.
Is there any, what would be the next step?
I imagine the next step is just contacting Computel and saying that we want to move forward, and there's probably a contract, so.
So we have a chance to discuss it more.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't actually have to vote on moving forward. Maybe we can just agree to authorize you to reach out and get more information. That way we can discuss it when Rebecca's here and move forward as a group.
Yeah, as soon as we have a contract in hand, then we can be concerned about that.
Perfect, okay, so we have
Okay.
marching orders. So Ryan, can you make sure that we reach out to Computel and get whatever is needed if we were to move forward with them? Okay, so I'd like to make a motion, so moving on to the next agenda item, consent agenda, I'd like to make a motion that we accept items 4 through 8 on the consent agenda.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next item, we are going to discuss Mr. Leff's appeal of his water bill. Did you want to, we don't mind if you make a quick comment. We met with you several weeks ago now.
I thank you for seeing me. I have two requests. The first is to lower our bill of $3,000. The second request is to double the amount of time that we have to pay it on a monthly basis. I've done extensive research on this bill because it's a critical thing in the operation of that piece of property. I've been in touch with the Attorney General. I have had extensive conversations with the Badger water meter company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I gave them the serial number of the meter that we have, and they sent me a text back saying that there was no record of the calibration of that meter at all. In addition to the fact there was a letter from Tim Thonis, the external meter accuracy test. There was none of that either, which could probably mean that the building was built in 1952 and the meter could be 67 years old. The rest of the note that he sent to me was all boilerplate, but the important part was that they cannot find any records on the accuracy or the calibration of this water meter. Sensibly speaking, $3,000 worth of water would just about float the building down the street. I've spoken with our maintenance man. There were indeed some small leaks, which we took care of, faucets and toilets and things like that. But there were tenants in there all the time, and they're not just dumb people. They could tell if a toilet was running completely or if there was an extensive leak on anything.
Mr. Leff, with the most recent bill that was sent out, has your water consumption gone back?
I'll come to that, sir. Yes.
Okay.
The current bill is $300, which we've been paying for the last 9 years. And so therefore, a spike for 1 month of $1,400 and another spike the next billing period of $3,000, any sensible person can see that there's something wrong. And everybody can say, well, and there's boilerplate on what they wrote to me from Badger Meter Company, saying that every meter gets a security an accuracy test before it leaves the factory. The meters are tested in 3 different flow ranges, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which doesn't mean anything to me. But the fact that my particular meter was not tested and has not been tested for 67 years. So I also want to say that I am a taxpayer in the village of New Paltz and have been for 9 years, and a resident of the village for many, many years before that. I'm not just some ruffian that's around here looking for a handout. This is a very important thing. I cannot afford to pay the bill the way it is, with the monthly payments and also the current bill. And I seek your understanding and your consideration of lowering the bill and giving me more time to pay it off. I brought my bookkeeper and associate here. I don't know if she'd like to say a few words in defense of all this whole thing, but it's getting to be a very, very difficult thing to bear. I don't know who else I can get in touch with, but I seek some consideration from the board here. Thanks very much. Would you like to say Leanne, this is Leanne.
I think we understand that your bill historically has been about $300 per quarter.
Yes.
And you had a couple of quarters where the bill was excessively above that, correct?
Yes.
Are you going to tell us anything different from what I just said?
I have copies of the bills here. Copies.
Yes. I think we're fine with, if you're not presenting any additional information, I think we're okay. We don't need to see copies of the bills.
Do we have a copy of the communication with the Badger? And has that information been given to our DPW to check against their
Yeah.
No, it hasn't.
records?
Right.
So this has not been given to us before?
Right. One thing I would like to point out is you may be looking at a meter that's not being used because the meters that are used in the village right now are only a few years old. So if you're talking about meters that are 60 years old, that is not what we use to determine water usage. And I've spoken at length with the gentleman who works for our DPW, John Lawler, about your situation and similar situations. So in any one period when leak tests are performed, there are generally about 70 to 80 properties in the village that have leaks. And technically the village is under no obligation to identify these leaks and communicate with residents. This is an additional service that our DPW performs. And John Lawler, our DPW staff, takes his job incredibly seriously and really goes above and beyond to communicate with residents to try to identify leaks and bring that to people's attention as soon as possible. And I think your situation is exactly that example. Let me finish, because, as you described, your usage was about $300, and then it went up, and John identified the leak, made you aware of it, you hired a contractor, he fixed the leaks, so you're back down to your normal consumption. I couldn't be more pleased with our proactive DPW staff who's looking out for residents and trying to help them identify problems or situations where they may be spending money on things that they didn't intend to spend money on. And this is it's a very common thing. When people own properties or homes or commercial properties, there are maintenance issues.
I think the problem is that with it being a...
You're gonna have to use the mic.
Leanne Muller, and I'm the bookkeeper for 52 South Chestnut. I think the problem is that with it being a quarterly water bill, you've got 3 months there, and you don't really know you have a problem until you see the bill come through, and then it's like, oh, what's this?
Aren't we discussing two separate water bills? This isn't just on one bill. This was actually one bill and then the next bill, correct?
We're talking about two bills.
Right.
One quarter was 1,300, the next quarter was 3,000.
Right, but once that first quarter hit $1,300, that's a big increase over what you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
How come that didn't raise any big flags when we have, because right now you're asking us to consider remedying two different quarters when attempts were made to try and make you aware of the situation. And really, after the first quarter, you should have said, hey, wait a minute, there's something very, very wrong here.
We did.
We did.
Right. When we got the bill and looked at it and saw that, then we started looking around to see what was going on, and we got it fixed. It wasn't that, other than the little thing you get in the bill with the different pinhole sizes and that, saying you may have a leak, that's the only thing.
If you, Mr. Leff, you're going to have to use the microphone.
On that point, I personally would check the water consumption twice a week, and we had a log on the meter as to just how much water was used. But the basis of the whole thing is the Badger Meter Company, after I gave them the serial number, could not find any records on that particular water meter at all. That's what bothers me the most.
Right. And the water meter you're describing might not be the water meter that's being used. So, for instance, in my house, there was a water meter outside the house, and then the water is being read remotely from the street with an electronic device that John Lawler uses.
So if I may suggest to the board, there's two separate issues here. There's a request to reduce the amount of the bill, and I think we're having a hard time justifying that. There's also a request to extend the period of payback time, and I'm wondering if there's, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that.
Right.
I'm amenable to extending the time period and creating a different repayment structure as well.
Right. And I think it's very important to emphasize, though, that it's actually illegal for us to provide you with a remedy so you don't have to pay the water that you use. We cannot gift anything to taxpayers. If you used a community or a municipal resource, we cannot make a decision to have you pay less. It's actually against the law.
We can, however, have our DPW check the information about the accuracy of the communication from Badger to ascertain whether the meter in question is the meter that we are using in the village to bill you. So that can be checked.
I don't completely follow you.
Well, you gave us a communication from Badger, which says that they have no record of any calibration. I don't know if they use that word. Let's say that word. Calibration of the meter that you believe is being used to meter your water usage. I'm suggesting that be given to our DPW to ascertain whether their records are in concert with the records of Badger, and even whether that is the correct meter that's being used to determine water use.
There's only one meter, sir.
Well, we'll find out.
Okay.
I mean, give it to DPW and we'll find out. That's one of the things that we are able to do, is to find out more information.
I also had many, many conversations with the company in Monticello, who was a distributor for Badger, and their top man had a long conversation with me, trying to say, to tell me that they just had no record of the meter whatsoever. Well, I'd like to go further with it, because I can't afford to pay it. That's all there is to it. I just can't afford to pay it. And anything that we can do to mitigate what my responsibilities are, that are legal, I'm in favor of.
So we've already given you one extension in terms of paying the bill, and I felt like we agreed to that the last time you came before our board. So are you asking for something?
Yes, I'm asking to.
What?
I'm asking to double that. Yes,
Double that.
make it a year of half the payments. Right now, they're $500 every month, and I'm asking for it to be cut to $250 for double the amount of time.
So you would continue to pay your regular quarterly bill and
Yes.
then $250
Yes, sir.
per month?
Yes, sir.
And how much is currently outstanding?
We've made one payment. I made that November 30th.
So you've made one $500 payment? And
$523 and,
I think you were estimating you had a $3,000 bill and a $1,400 bill?
yes. The $1,400 bill we paid.
So you did pay the 14, so you
Yes,
have
because-
3,000 less $250, or
No.
less 500.
Right.
So you have $2,500 outstanding.
Well, I have the bill here.
So it would be 10 more months at $250.
Do you want to see the bill that we just got, or?
I'd like to make a motion to extend the repayment plan to add an additional 6 months, which would double
Second.
it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right?
We double the-
I didn't hear that.
We double the repayment period of time. We
Okay.
have another 6 months.
Thank you.
We
Okay,
cannot by law do anything with the actual bill itself.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, next agenda item. We discussed this concept of a community square. The village has been discussing a project that some professors at SUNY have been working on. They were recipients of a Arts and Humanities grant, and it's a interdisciplinary grant. So they have a renewable energy guy at University of Albany, an architect at University of Buffalo, a photographer, a professor of photography at SUNY, an additional arts-related professor. But basically, they're interested in identifying a spot within our village that would provide significant symbolism to highlight our community's efforts to promote renewable energy. Additionally, farmers markets, several concepts that resonate with so many of us in this community. And our board had been discussing 3 different potential sites. This was an idea that was offered to me a while ago, but just this concept of the area that is in front of the post office. So the landlord for that property is the Kempner Group. And if you have ever really looked at that parking lot in front of the post office and then how it connects with the gas station where Mobil is, there's a great deal of inefficiently used space. So the thinking was reconfigure that parking lot so ideally you actually add parking spaces and maybe increase space that could be used for this community square idea. So in addition to that property, our board wanted to look closer at maybe some other spaces in the village, and 2 others that were identified. One was I guess we don't really have an official name for it, but it's kind of that hill that is next to Gourmet Pizza that leads up to the parking lot. I believe that property is owned by Bobby Downs. And the other 3rd property would be the section of Church Street between where Barner Books starts and Academy Street. So we asked our village planner, David Gilmore, to take a closer look at the pros and cons of these 3 sites as a community square to work with this arts and humanities team that is very interested in promoting a project like this. So we received a write-up from David Gilmore where he just kind of outlined the specifics related to each of these sites. So I wanted to kind of open it up to our group to see if anyone had any additional thoughts.
When we discussed this last week in executive session, we were pretty much focusing on the post office parking lot. And while I'm very intrigued and excited about having a green space if we are going to rearrange parking spaces in that parking lot to create a green space. Why wouldn't we rearrange it to create more parking when parking is one of the #1 concerns and issues that we're constantly facing in the village? And at that point, I suggested the Church Street location. It was something that I had heard former Mayor West say, and I'm sure plenty of people have said it before that. And the parking lot on the corner of 32, where the mobile station is, there is so much traffic there that doesn't feel very green to me with the amount of cars that are sitting in traffic. To have the Church Street location where we have our nice old buildings and it's more of a New Paltz feel than a gas station parking lot, personally. And one thing that I'd like to note is that David's notes are referring to Church Street from the northern edge by Barner's Books to the edge of Academy Street. But I would like to suggest that we just block off Church Street from Main Street down to Academy Street, because otherwise we're going to have an awful lot of people turning to get into those 4 or 5 spots that are right next to the bistro. And then they're going to have to turn around because they have nowhere to go, and there's going to be very awkward for traffic. So I would suggest that we actually just block off the entire street, and that would actually also give us the opportunity to fix the wheelchair access on the curb on Main Street right in front of Liquid. If you are traveling west on Main Street, you are forced onto Main Street if you want to cross over Church Street, because the curb is not cut facing west, the curb is cut facing south. I actually, pushing a stroller on Small Business Saturday, was forced to push a stroller onto Main Street. It's not very safe at all. So if we were able to turn that into a pedestrian thoroughfare, I think that would be a big win for the community. We could actually, if we were taking all of Church Street and up to Academy Street and designating it for this purpose, we could actually make it a little bit narrower, take those parking spots next to the bistro, put greenery around it. We could make that wider and create additional parking in that parking lot as well, and we could have more, we could have our green space, we could have more parking in that parking lot and more parking in the mobile parking lot. And we could increase parking in 2 spots and get our green space.
Any other comments?
Would there be adequate?
Microphone.
Would there be adequate access, in your opinion, to that parking lot?
Well, it would you would only have access from 32 at that point.
Yeah.
But if to do what is suggested on this document, I think would be very messy, because if you're creating really what 20 feet of street at that point for people to have access to 5 parking spots. So I mean, it's all in the design, and I would be curious to get David's thoughts on what I'm thinking. But I do think that there is potential to increase parking in 2 different locations in the village.
Yeah.
How would you be increasing parking at Church Street, though?
Because if we narrow that 20-foot section that I'm discussing, if we could make that narrower, we could take those spots that are on the side of the bistro now. Maybe we could redesign that to add extra parking in there. It would only be accessible from 32, but we could make it bigger.
But the challenge with that, and this is what I've discussed with the planner as well as the SUNY professors, is, and right, this is not a new idea of closing off Church Street. I think the only way you could ever consider closing off Church Street is if you continue to have that outlet back behind the bistro. By closing that off as well, you're basically eliminating a safety valve off of Main Street. And folks talk about parking, they also more regularly talk about traffic. And I think any sort of safety valves off of Main Street are incredibly valuable. And I would be very concerned about forfeiting that option based on what you just described.
When you say safety valve, are you, thank you, referring to in emergency situations or in everyday situations?
Both.
Because I don't think people should be driving through the parking lot to avoid traffic on Main Street.
Well, they certainly drive through the parking lot, and they certainly drive down Church Street. When I talk about if you were to close Church Street, then that would be a safety valve for congestion that you would be losing.
Okay. Well, we've already spoken to, or someone's already spoken to the landlord at the 45 Main Street address. I think we should, I'm liking what I'm hearing about Church Street as an alternate as well. So why don't we make sure that any property owners in that location are contacted and are part of a conversation, that we're discussing this and.
Well, I know
how they
that
feel about this.
the new owner of the building that has Team Love is very interested in the idea of closing off that section of Church Street, and I believe the restaurateur who's in Endcut is interested in a project like this as well. The problem is the professors who kind of floated this idea of a community square are not interested in Church Street at all. They really feel like they want something that would be more symbolic and visible and also have exposure to the sun. Because what they would really like to see is, some sort of like demonstration like solar panels, like a learning playground, a farmer's market. That's really what they're interested in. So when I shared the 3 potential sites with them, they were not really interested in all in the Church Street site or the site to the right of Gourmet Pizza.
Well, why don't we ask them to look further, because I'm not overly, for the reasons that Dennis stated, I just don't think this busy intersection is necessarily the best place for that either. I'm not a professor, it's not my project. I think the Pizza Hill idea is something we should do on our own if we're gonna do it. I don't think that doesn't seem like it's big enough to really honor this concept, but I'm not real excited about the 45 Main Street, and if they're not excited about Church Street, maybe we come up with another site. I don't want to walk away from the opportunity, though.
Well, I think that's exactly the point, is we have an opportunity, we have a landlord who's interested in a concept, and I think the landlord would benefit by beautifying that parking lot. It's truly an eyesore, and I don't think it's representative of the way we want our downtown to look. So I think we have a unique opportunity here to clean up that site. I just think this is an important and unique opportunity, and the plan would be to actually end up with a net increase in parking spots by optimizing the spots that are already there and improving the right-of-way between Mobile and the post office parking lot.
Tom?
I thought it was, thank you. I thought it was interesting to introduce the Church Street closure idea. I'm not particularly in favor of closing streets in our small village. We don't have that many streets. I'm not so interested, as you know, in even making some little streets one way that some other people think is a good idea, but I don't think it's a good idea. I think also the original concept that the various professors from these 3 SUNY institutions gave us is the least interrupting of the life of the village. That parking lot could be redesigned with additional parking spaces, as long as people are flexible as to where they're placed. The design that they gave us, or the 2 designs that they gave us, are not the only possible designs. I mean, if we set them onto it, they might come up with 3 or 4 additional ideas. And they could include, for example, a rain garden and some interesting play area for children, in addition to providing additional parking spaces. And it wouldn't interrupt the flow of traffic in the village at all. Whereas I believe that closing Church Street would turn out to interrupt the flow of traffic in the village. So I like this original site. I agree that the Pizza Hill area, which I think could be made a lot nicer than it is. Because right now, it's not very nice.
It's not very safe either.
And it's not very safe either, I agree, because people coming in and out of there don't see very easily up and down Main Street. But I think something much more could be done with that area. There are many small municipalities that have pocket parks or pocket areas of green that are very attractive features. There's another little alleyway very nearby that, which now looks like a dump, and maybe it is a dump that could be made into
Which one is that?
There's a very small alley area.
Creamery, right?
Right, yeah, I would say it's within 50 feet of the one we're talking about.
So east of Pizza Hut?
No, yes, east of, yes. At any rate, there are spaces along there that could be made much more attractive as features of our downtown. But would they constitute a commons? No, they would not. This area by the mobile station and the post office could indeed constitute an area of congregation for people and beauty in the very center of the village. And granting that it's in a very busy area, there are lots of pedestrians who are using that area, not just cars. Many people are walking every direction along that way. So I favor the original idea, but I also am in agreement with the mayor that there may be other places. Maybe there are other places. Well, that was your idea. It was somebody's idea. There are other potential locations in the downtown area. Perhaps an intelligent combination of photographer, architect, and what was the third person?
Renewable energy guy.
Renewable
Well, I
energy
mean, sure, there are always other, but you'd be blown away by how thorough these folks have been in terms of investigating opportunities. Like, you know, the presentation that took place a Saturday afternoon a few weeks ago that I invited everyone to, it was amazing, just like all the maps that they had up on the wall and all the various iterations of this idea and a variety of other ideas. So, you know, these concepts have been pretty well vetted, and these folks are very excited about the prospect of doing something in front of the post office. And because they were excited, I made a point to call Jim Kempner from the Kempner Group again this week to say, hey, you know, would you still be interested if something like this were to be proposed? And he's still interested, because I originally had contacted him earlier, and he was open to the idea, but he emphasized, do not come to me with any plan that involves decreasing parking. And I said I wouldn't dare. I would only come to you with a plan that involved a net increase to parking. So
we came to this conversation, thank you, we keep forgetting that we're helping each other out that way.
It's easy.
We came to this conversation expecting that we were going to take a look at various options and weigh in on them. It seems like there's really one option that is embraced by the people leading this effort. And I'm just not that excited about it, so I don't want to stand in the way by any means, but I would like to get some other options. I'd like to see what's some other, ask either the planner or these professors to take another look. I just really think that's I wouldn't want to be in that part of town for my green living, you know, it just doesn't strike me as exciting. I'd like some more options.
Does it? I think I tried to answer that question earlier by saying they have really spent an enormous amount of time identifying the options that we came up with, and taking a hard look at
So
what
it's a
is
take it or leave it
available.
situation. That's not an attack, or?
I don't know if it's
Is that
atta-
your
I don't-
analysis? It's a take it or leave it?
That's my impression, when I went back to them and said that we were taking a look at these other sites. They were, it seemed like it definitely took a lot of wind out of their sails, because they were very excited about this project after looking at so many different possible sites, and they got comfortable with this, and they had, you know, this pretty accomplished professor of architecture from Buffalo draw up these designs. You know, they've already spent a fair amount of time on this because it kind of met the criteria that they were excited about, and you know, they have grant money to look at this project, and they would be excited about pursuing other grant opportunities to realize this project.
So could we tell them that we love it, but we need one more meeting?
Or we could
Perhaps we
invite
could
them to come and explain to us why they love this site versus the others that they considered. I'm sure that they would be.
Actually, that might be useful to us if they came and that way we could tick off anything else that we might have been thinking of as a potential location if they've already looked at it and disregarded it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wish they had engaged us earlier in the process, but if they can engage us now, I think that's better than, you know, than us saying no or you know, causing problems with it. So if we can hear directly from them, let's have a discussion, and maybe they'll win over our hearts and minds.
Let's research further.
Well, I clearly do not want to say no.
Well, you know, I wonder, do they even need us to pursue this project, really? So they could go to Jim Kempner themselves and say, this is our concept, and if they came up with the fund, because I was thinking that, you know, the village would basically just be involved in, you know, just marking off the barriers that we get Jim comfortable with, and even just, you know, like painting this section to designate it, and really just putting the ball in their court to try to identify funding to develop a learning playground or solar panel kiosk or whatever else that they were interested in. I wasn't looking for the village to do this, so I think it would be really fantastic if the village was working collaboratively with professors at the college who, you know, really want to do something that would improve our community. But we could also encourage them to do that on their own too.
Well, I would like us to be involved. I don't believe that we should be not involved. I think I've said before that the Citizens Review Committee on the Comprehensive Plan that I chaired, which delivered its reports in 2010 and 2011, among its strong recommendations was the establishment of a commons in the village. So I have had a long-standing interest in this, and I would not want to, I would not want the occasion to pass without absolute necessity. So, and I don't see absolute necessity now, but I think that it would be a really good thing if we could get them to come here and talk with us about the options and make us altogether comfortable with this as the choice point. I think it's the best of the three that we've considered, but I don't know if we've considered all of them.
And, you know, they certainly can go forward without us, I guess if that's an option for them, but I think if they would like to work with us, and we would like to work with them, we'd like to talk to them. I just think that's, you know,
And
that's unreasonable.
while they would use grant money to establish this green space, are they going to maintain the upkeep on this green space?
Well, it would be private property, so we did, you know, I think it would make sense for the village to work with Kempner and say, we're going to maintain it in terms of, let's say,
That would be a
providing
cost.
that would be a cost.
Okay.
And it would also be a potential benefit to our community by having a community square. But, you know, it just seems like a heavier lift for them if they're going to have to figure out where they get funding from to maintain it. And maybe they could identify where to get that money from via some grant opportunities.
I find that to be, long-term, that's a much less likely
I agree.
eventuality.
I agree. That's why I think this is an exciting opportunity to work with the college on something that would benefit our community, even if there is some expense in terms of providing general maintenance for this community square.
Then let's get them here and work together with them.
Okay, so I would like to propose that they do a short presentation on the 16th after our public presentation. I know, Dennis, you said that you didn't want to have additional topics, but...
As did Rebecca, because it's a busy time of year and we wanted community residents to be able to pay full attention to what's going on, which is why we agreed to that when we did.
Is there, yeah, this couldn't wait till the first meeting in January?
We're not going to be able to break ground on anything until the spring anyway.
Right, but everything takes more time than anyone anticipates. I think it would be valuable to, give some positive feedback towards these professors who are working on this project that they're very excited about.
I would like to give them positive feedback. So that, I would like to communicate to them that we're very excited about the idea and that we need just a little more time for consideration and want their presentation.
Well, I would say I'm very excited about the idea, but I'm not very excited about the location, so I wouldn't want to, I'm not angry or upset or opposed violently or anything. It's not, I think if the village board were more early or more fully involved, we would probably be looking harder at the Church Street option. So they've got to sell me a bit on.
So I'd like to make a motion that we include the professors from SUNY to explain to us, what this community square project looks like in their minds, and to have a short presentation from them on the 16th.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd rather do it in January, so I'll vote no.
So you're voting no against the presentation? Dennis?
No.
Okay, so
It's what we already agreed to at our last meeting. I'm not changing
So-
it when Rebecca's not here.
I'd like to make a motion to have that presentation on the first meeting in January.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next topic. Municipal Center. So do we have any questions or comments about the ongoing work regarding this project?
Well, are we planning on giving an update from the executive committee, or?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess that would be the comment. We have had or a couple of meetings, the most recent of which was just yesterday. One of the things that we try to do is to come up with a way of equitably figuring out cost and responsibilities. And during the course of those conversations, we started working on the concept of weighted averages based on square footage and usage. There'd be a category that was 100% town when it came to maintaining the space and cleaning and operations and maintenance. And those would be things such as the police and the courts and town offices. There would be shared space that would be handled jointly by the town and village, and there would be the individual village and town spaces. And we spent some time working on, based on square footage and usage, what that formula would be. Right now it's just a concept, and we're looking to turn to the architect to actually measure the square footage in each one of those categories and come back to us, and we will learn from that analysis whether the split is 75-25, 70-30, 80-20, whatever it might be. And that will be the formula that'll be used across the board when it comes to operations and maintenance and shared costs going forward.
I saw some breakdown of that, though, didn't I? That was more, at least suggestive than what I'm seeing in this right now.
Well, we are reluctant to throw out numbers because everything we have in terms of numbers are really just rough estimates.
Right, and we've
things.
so we've been using that number of 25%.
Yes.
And that was originally arrived at based on an estimate that the architect did some time ago. And that's why we've been using 25%.
Yes.
So Don was talking about the weighted average exercise. So in a meeting with Don, myself, Dan Torres, Marty Irwin, and Supervisor-elect Neil Batez, we looked at each of the 4 floors, so basement, and then floors 1, 2, and 3, and we eyeballed what we thought the square foot usage would be in terms of village-only, shared, and town/village. So town/village would be, an example of that would be the courts or the police. And we came to a number that was slightly higher than the 25%, but the group was pretty confident that our estimate was in line with the architect's initial estimate of 25%. So I wanted to correct something. Dave Lent was quoted in the newspaper that just came out today, and he said that the village estimate of space at 25% is grossly overstated. And he made this comment publicly at our last session, where he said it would be something like more like 15% based on his analysis. So I think it's important to correct Mr. Lent, because the architect as well as the executive committee has looked at this, and the usage number is much closer to 25%. And the concern that he was trying to address was that if the village was paying for 25% of the building, but only using 15 to 20%, that we would be getting a raw deal. So I think it's very important that we correct Mr. Lent's statement in the newspaper. Did you have anything else to add?
Well, the other thing, as far as an ongoing item still under discussion, was how to deal with the issue of the community center. Our executive committee had a lot of discussion about that. I know initially there was discussion of that being part of the project, and I know that the village representatives at that meeting were not overly enthusiastic. Why would we want the community center? It's not a new building. It's you know, it may not last as long as new construction. It's full of town programming, and there was a pretty compelling argument made that if the town were to retain that, you would need to subdivide the land, and that would be complicated. There was also a pretty compelling argument that the same staff that might clean and maintain the new building on the town side would probably be asked to clean and maintain the community center, and that might be an accounting nightmare. How do you account for, I spent 2.2 hours at the community center and the rest of my time at the municipal center, and when it came to payroll time, that might be difficult. At the end of the day, we decided as the executive committee to recommend that we do include the community center as part of the project, that it be sold to the LDC for $1, I believe. As I understand it, at last night's town board meeting, there was not a lot of comfort with that idea, and the town board is under the belief that the parcel is already subdivided, so that issue wouldn't be there, and they were of the opinion, as I understand it, that they wanted to retain that building.
I'm sorry, and just so it turned out it's not subdivided, it's own lot.
I was getting there.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry,
Yeah, that was as of last night. That was your discussion. And some research today showed that that parcel may not be subdivided. It may be one large parcel. So that's still an open question, and I guess we'll be all talking about that some more. I think that covers it right, Tim.
Yeah, I thought actually the exec committee with the village and town representatives and Supervisor-elect Batez actually did a really good job of wrestling with lots of different numbers and concepts to come up with a recommendation that it would make sense to include the community center when calculating the total square footage used by both the town and the village. So that discussion continues. Then one announcement that I had related to this project, I think I alluded to it at our last meeting, but we've been able to confirm that we are having a meeting with a technical assistant consultant who specializes in identifying NYSERDA incentives for new construction projects. So we're doing that Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. with the architect and OLA consulting engineers and our village planner, as well as anyone on the exec committee who is available to attend that morning. The village planner had suggested that I make sure that we invite the police chief as well. So I saw Chief Snyder this morning at Town Gown and made sure that he knew that he was invited if he chose to come. But one of the things that the police chief has been working on in terms of discussions with the architect is just making sense that the flow of the building in terms of the police needs and the court needs and the interrelation between the court and the police, that everything is done with an eye towards efficiency. And at Town Gown this morning, Chief Dugatkin from the UPD was discussing how the UPD just opened up their new police center on campus, and they were very excited about the work that they did in terms of how that building was designed. So Marty Irwin and I encouraged Mr. Dugatkin or we asked him if he would make himself available to meet with Chief Snyder and the architect, just so, since the university police have looked at designing a police station, any sort of resources, especially since those design concepts are probably fresh in his mind, and he was very open to sharing any sort of expertise with the architect and Chief Snyder and the folks who are looking at the design of this building. So I thought that was useful input from the folks at the university.
May I ask about the bylaws? Were they already vetted by our attorney? These are draft bylaws.
Well, the draft bylaws were presented to us by our attorney, and our executive committee and our village attorney have made a few suggestions in terms of tweaking those bylaws, as well as the intermunicipal agreement between the town and the village related to this project. Don and I sat with Dan Torres last night at 4:30 in the afternoon, going over additional concerns to smooth out any rough edges. And I think the exec committee is doing a very good job of trying to make these documents as thorough and useful as possible. So that process continues. So what you have is a draft. We came up with a few additional suggestions or questions for the attorneys, particularly bond counsel, to help with the concepts within the bylaws and the IMA.
And let me just add, there were a number of concerns stated at public comment over the last meeting and a couple of meetings, and we made it a point to reach out to those individuals and make sure that we had documented what concerns were. We went through a bunch of old emails to make sure that we specifically addressed or made ourselves aware of all the concerns that were stated, all the concerns that individuals had wanted to summarize and supply to us, and we used that as the basis for a review of some of these documents to make sure that we were taking advantage of all the wisdom in the community, whether it be at this table or in this room or not.
Early draft.
And so I thought that was important to make sure we heard the community, acknowledged them, and valued what they had to say.
Good stuff. Any other questions before we go to another topic?
No.
Okay. Hydrant and valve replacement project. So we've spoken about this a few times, this idea that we have 7 locations for hydrants in our community, and these hydrants absolutely work. I reported out last week that every single hydrant in the village is operative, thanks to the follow-through of our DPW. But we do have 7 that are of an older style and require adapters. So legally, we're fine. Our firemen have those adapters on their truck, and they go to a fire, and if they were required to use that hydrant, they could. But, you know, as we can all imagine, it probably takes a little bit of time to use an adapter versus using the 5-inch valves that each of the other approximately 140 fire hydrants have in the village. So we've spoken about this idea of spending money to replace those older style hydrants. And we had an initial estimate, but like everything else, things cost more money than anyone anticipates. And we also added a few things to the project at the request of our DPW. So including contingencies, we're talking about a total project of $122,000 approximately. But our DPW staff and our engineer, even if we wanted to do this today, they advised us not to go to market and start that process of getting bids officially. So that's an estimate of what we imagine the project would cost, that $122K. But they were saying just based on the time of year, construction firms would bid higher because it's winter and it's just not an optimal time of year to do this type of work. So it seems like it may make more sense to consider this when we're looking at the budget for the upcoming year when we begin the budget process. So that's been the thinking as of late. So I wanted to see if anyone had feedback.
I think the extra time will also give us a chance to see if there might be any grant opportunities available for this sort of work. I don't know if there would or not, but I'm not a grant writer, so a little bit extra time would help in that regard.
Seems totally sensible to me.
Agreed. And I would also like to point out, not only did the DPW work very hard and was very diligent in this, the mayor was very diligent in following up on this after this issue was a safety issue raised by residents. And I would like to commend the mayor for all the work that he has put into this project as well.
I agree. Hear, hear.
I was actually caught on your street this week taking a picture of one of these older style fire hydrants.
In the trenches, okay.
Okay. And to the comment about grant opportunities, we have identified water-related projects, particularly water main updates that are needed because a lot of our infrastructure is approximately 100 years old. And this hydrant project was included in the initial estimate we had, where we worked with our engineering firm and our DPW to come up with a wish list that came to about $4.4 million. So our grant writer, Mark Blauer, who was here earlier presenting on the grant that we received related to the DEC consent order and the sewer updates on Plattekill, is also working very hard to see if he can identify grant opportunities for this this collection of water-related projects. So hopefully we'll get some good news in terms of a grant that we could apply for. Next topic I had listed here as Turk property, proposed well for DEP water project and proposed town sewer district. So this has been discussed a few times. Part of the aqueduct shutdown would involve sourcing water from 101 Plains Road, as well as the property that used to be referred to as the Plesser property, which Steve Turk from Rocking Horse Ranch purchased very recently. Do we have any questions or comments about this agenda item?
Well, I had brought this up at last meeting, and the board had asked me to identify someone to speak to the board and address any concerns. And I actually was looking at January for that discussion, so I didn't really follow through on that until today. I did put in a call to the DEC in Albany to their Office of Water. And the question was, since this location at one time had been agricultural, and responsibly and properly, as I understand it, the new owner of the property has proactively asked, I guess the DEC, what do I need to do? What steps would I need to take to make this into a working water park? So my question was, is there any concern in the context of the backup water supply with regard to anything which may be found in the water, found in the soil, pardon me, getting down to the aquifer? Specifically, were there new concerns that had not been previously identified? And I was reassured in speaking with Albany that pesticide life is not that long, and traditionally they don't go that deep as an aquifer. So he indicated that the initial test results which were done at that site should be sufficient, and if nothing was found at that time, there would likely be nothing new. As part of the conversation, I discussed the fact there would be there was a water park planned for that location, and that was actually a more lively part of the conversation. So he was asking me all sorts of questions like, where are they going to get the water for a water park when there's hardly any water there, for well drilling? So I will provide whatever public information is available from the town to make sure there's no. Anyway, I'll follow up on that conversation. But in the context of the village and the water project, there seem to be no concerns.
Right. I can actually comment just because I've brought my kids to the water park in Fishkill, where Steve Turk has his water park. You probably Splash Down.
Yeah, I've been there.
So we've been there, and I was explaining to my kids how, because Steve Turk is very proud of the fact that it's a very efficiently run park in terms of its water usage. A great deal of the water is recycled, and he has some pretty high-tech systems in terms of reusing the water, and he has engineers who are, and so I actually got my kids very excited about touring the facility there at Splashtown, and they even commented to one of the lifeguards who were working there. They were like, "Do you know that you recycle all your water here?" And the lifeguard had no idea. But I just got a kick out of the fact that they were so excited about getting to tour the engineering behind the scenes at Splashtown.
I don't want to say anything about, I'm sorry, thank you, about DEC's knowledge, but the information in the 8-pound report is pretty clear about how much water would be used by the water park, and how much water is available from the combination, I think it's of 4, 5, and 8 wells. There are at least 8 wells in that area that have been tested in various combinations, the one combination being the very best, and it also admits of pretty easy interrelationship amongst these 3 wells that would give us, I believe, in excess of 165 gallons a minute, and the water park, I think, would use approximately 20 to 30 gallons a minute. So if they are as efficient as they propose, then we would have more water than we have been allowing in our calculations. There would be more available to us. I also asked our engineer about whether there was anything new in the concerns that might be raised. Is there anything that we don't already know about, that we haven't already taken into account? And he detailed for me the presence of the former orchard and where the orchard was, and what kind of contaminants there might be as a result of having put various insecticides and fertilizers in the ground, but a long time ago, and how they do not last this long, and how it would be more than unusual for them to be able to penetrate down into the rock level, which is 200 feet deep, in order to have any effect whatsoever on the water.
You said 200 feet. My understanding is that the aquifer at this property is 600 feet.
500 or 600 feet, but I know that it's
In-
at
in
least
comparison-
200 feet into rock. at
Sure,
least.
sure, but in comparison, I mean, this is an incredibly deep aquifer versus even the
Yeah.
aquifer
Well, these
at
are
101
rock-
Plains, which
yeah.
is approximately 200 feet.
Yeah, that's altogether correct, but where we have at least 100 feet before you get to the sand and gravel at Plains Road. But here we're dealing with rock wells, so there, once you get through the various levels of rubble, clay, sand, gravel, rock, then you're down hundreds of feet, and there'd be no way for pesticides to have invaded that area. So at least in the opinion of our engineer, there's no new news here. We're not dealing with anything new. It has been taken into account. What it might require is a restatement, though. It may, if there's any restatement required, if there are any issues that are raised, our engineer would be able to address those issues.
Well, that's consistent with what I reported.
Yeah, right.
You just include that water usage includes the hotel rooms? not
Yes,
the water park?
yes, not just the water park, but the hotel as well. Correct, thank you, Jeff.
Right, I think that's a tricky thing with the proposed Wildberry project. It's regularly referred to in our community as a water park, but it's a full-on destination resort with 250 rooms. I mean, that's what this project is. So it will be an intense water user, but the thinking is even with 165 gallons per minute that these wells could yield, the total amount that the destination resort would use, and was the number that you were
Somewhere
citing.
between 20 and 30 gallons a minute.
Right. So we're awaiting New York State DEC Brownfield report. So this is an updated report, and they're looking closely at this property formerly known as the Plesser property. But, you know, just from a numbers perspective, my understanding is that where the pesticides had been used previously at that site, it's 500 feet away from where the proposed wells would be, and then the proposed well, as I added, you know, these are deep wells at 600 feet deep. So, and I read this before, but the owner of the property, Steve Turk, has also asked the town and the village to look at creating a sewer district for this property. So I've asked for feedback from our Water Sewer Council, Dave Merzig, on this concept, and he said if we were to go forward with this, he's a proponent of a standalone sewer, or I'm sorry, I erased that standalone comment. He's a proponent of a proper sewer district as opposed to a one-off arrangement with just a particular property. He thinks that's in the best interest of the village. So that discussion continues as well. It's going to move on to our next topic.
Sam 6?
So Sam 6, our neighbor at 15 Plattekill Avenue, that's a tech company that designs software solutions and applications for primarily the utilities industry and other municipalities. Our village is required, again, because of our DEC consent orders, to have a GIS, and GIS stands for Geographic Information System, where we can identify our various infrastructure assets, and if it would be really fantastic if we were able to just create an electronic database that keeps track of our inspections and these infrastructure assets. This is actually a DEC requirement, and also if we're going to be compliant with our our MS4 requirements, and that stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. I looked both of those up recently because we regularly use GIS and MS4, and acronyms are generally pretty annoying if you don't know what they're referring to. But we had a promising conversation on Monday morning with our village planner and our superintendent of public works, as well as his deputy, about what the village would need. So we're actually going to attend a demo tomorrow afternoon at Sam 6 to see if they could provide us with a GIS solution for our village. Any questions, or may I move on?
Go to.
Okay, Tom asked if we had a safety committee. He had read an article in a NYMOR report.
Yep.
So I was going to let Tom comment or ask about this.
Well, NYMAR, which is the New York Municipal Insurance Reciprocal, I have no idea why they coined that title for themselves, but reciprocal must mean something to them. But they strongly recommend that we have a safety committee. And I didn't know that we did have a safety committee. And I was surprised at my own ignorance about this. So I asked the mayor if we have a safety committee. And we evidently don't have a safety committee. We do have designated roles in case of emergency. So we have things that we must do, but we do not have a proactive safety committee constituted in the way that they recommend, with elected officials, members of the staff, as well as from your insurance company, to look into how, well, it's risk management, if you will. I mean, that's what insurance is, risk management. How do you manage the risks? Since there will always be risks, how do you manage the most likely risks? You do that by looking forward and assessing how your infrastructure is functioning and how you can take account of that in a planful way going forward. So I'm suggesting that we consider just taking their ideas, making them as narrowly tailored to us as we can, and establishing a safety committee going forward.
That sounds great, Mr. Chairman.
What does the safety committee do?
How can a safety committee? A safety committee does an accident incident review. It does hazard identification and plans to account for the probable hazards that your municipality will meet. I mean, we know, for example, that we have a sometime problem with sidewalk clearance. We have a suit against us right now by someone who fell down and was hurt about a year ago. Is this an issue or is it not an issue? We need someone, we would have a committee assess that. We know that, for example, our hydrants were damaged in a way that might have been foreseen if we had had an assessment of these differently valved instruments in advance of having an outside fire department come and use those hydrants, which did not know what to do. So there must be 1,000 potential hazards that could be identified. Let's say we identify 6 or 8 at a time.
So a safety committee would identify the curb being cut in front of Liquid to properly cross Church Street without being redirected onto Main Street if you have a stroller or a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Can you tell that I have a pet peeve?
They would, a safety committee would also have available all of the traffic counts. How many traffic accidents are there at how many intersections in our village, and what are the likely steps that would be taken to mitigate the hazards there.
Was I imagining this, or did you comment on, like, is there an advantage to having a safety committee as a municipality? Like, could our insurance premiums go down?
Might be.
Or are we opening ourselves up to risk by identifying potential hazards?
Well, that was one of, I was gonna suggest that maybe we do a half measure and designate whatever it might be, 2 meetings per year, where we invite various people who might be able to speak to this issue and discuss safety issues, and rather than have a standing committee. But my next thought was if we identify something as a concern or as a risk in a public meeting, and we do not adequately fix it, I mean, we have, opened ourselves up to some serious liability, and rightly so.
But let me suggest that this is being filmed for posterity right now. And willful ignorance is not any excuse in any law in any modern society.
But
So
the only thing we're on
ignorance
the only
is
thing we're on the
not
hook for
bliss.
right now is that curb cut on Church Street that Dennis keeps pounding the table about.
Well, let me.
But
put this
I-
way. I propose that we have one more discussion of this issue. And if at that discussion, there is sufficient sentiments, I will then move that we establish a safety committee using the general guidelines in this New York Municipal Insurance Reciprocal Report. And I would urge you to take a quick look at it. I believe it was delivered to each of us sometime last month.
Okay, so during the report from our auditor, we were discussing an appraisal of our various capital assets.
Yes.
So it feels like that information would be useful to this safety committee.
Yes.
And I know that our village planner regularly talks about identifying like a long-term capital plan, like where do we need to spend money on various projects. It
Yes.
feels like that would be useful to this safety committee. Additionally, we have, and I actually have been very impressed with the work that folks at the town government, particularly Carol Connolly, has done regarding emergency preparedness. So it feels like that is related to this
It is.
topic. I sat at a tabletop exercise with all of the various emergency service professionals involved in our community, as well as other stakeholders, and we did a tabletop exercise recently, thinking through how different folks would respond to, and the example was a chemical spill on the thruway that affected an area of X. So that emergency preparedness piece, I think, is being identified, or it just feels like this safety committee concept is potentially very broad, and it seems like all of this information would be incredibly useful for us to gather. Just trying to wonder how we realize this
Well, let me
effort.
just cite what they say. It's a low-cost endeavor, taking an objective look at your organizational risk management strategy to avoid accidents and minimize claims. What could be done differently to prevent loss? How can we correct physical hazards in various departments?
Well,
That's the sketch.
Okay, so another project that's being worked on, and it's related to the SUNY professors who are interested in this community square project, is they are working collaboratively with SAM6 because they are interested in an app that basically would be used by various folks in the community. And my understanding is that this has been, similar approaches have been used in other areas, and it actually helps with planning, where if you get enough feedback, let's say several residents are saying, there should be a stop sign in that corner, or that stop sign is a terrible idea, but just the idea that you're collecting data on the fly via a app designed for your municipality, it seems like that also kind of works with this safety committee.
Good indeed.
And these professors have been very excited about the partnership that they've created with SAM 6. So it just seems like we're kind of doing some of this work, maybe not necessarily under the umbrella of a safety committee already.
I agree.
That's an excellent point about this app and the amount of data that it would provide, because if we don't have a safety committee, who's actually going to be reviewing all of the data that comes in? If it's everybody in the village is providing us with data, that could potentially be a lot of data to review.
Well, I mean, that's kind of part of the functionality of the app, is that it collects the data in a format, and the likes of a planner would use that data. So it's kind of early days, and anyone's interested in this. I'm sure these professors and the folks at SAM 6 would love to kind of help us, because I've had a little bit of a hard time kind of wrapping my head around exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it, but it kind of feels like this discussion fits with what they're doing, and it's a work in progress, and these folks are diving in deep into seeing how this could be used or would be used. So.
Well, we're required by law to move forward the GIS if we can get help from a local business and partner with the private sector. I think that, and also with SUNY, that sounds like a great idea.
Right.
Keep us posted.
Well, I'd like to put this on our agenda, not even the 16th, is too soon, so in January for further consideration.
Okay.
I'm
Agreed.
in favor of that, and maybe we can ask our planner too to update it. I know that this is something that David Gilmore is very interested in, is identifying like a long-term capital plan, like where we need to be spending money, and some of that money has to be spent for safety-related issues. So we can also ask him to help us think about it through that lens as well. All right, so next agenda item, we have 2 resolutions that I guess we have to take roll call votes to approve. Does anyone have any comments about either one of these? We discussed this a while ago. So the first one has to do with the creation of 10 long-term permitted parking spaces at our municipal parking lot, kind of behind Starbucks and behind 15 Plattekill Avenue. And these are the 10 spaces. They're actually numbered 67 through 76 on the southern edge of that lot. And we discussed this idea that so a holder of this permit would be able to park there for $10 per month, Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then that means that these spaces would also be available for others to use during the off hours, let's say in the evenings and on weekends. So this permit holder would only have access to these spots Monday through Friday during those business hours. So we need to take a roll call to.
We need to put it on the table first. So move the item.
So I'd like to move the item to accept this concept of offering these permitted spaces at $10 a month.
Second.
All in favor? Or no, now we'll do roll call.
Ryan has the call.
Just got to call the names. You want to?
Dennis, yeah.
Aye.
Tim Rogers,
Aye.
Tom Rocco,
Aye.
Don Carr.
Aye.
And then Rebecca's excused. And then the other piece, again, related to parking. One of the reasons I felt that we did this one, and this is a resolution authorizing the increase of the monthly fee for long-term parking at the Village Hall Municipal Lot. So currently we have 27 spaces, and these are 24/7 permits, and we had been charging $10 per month. So we're just raising that. I felt like one of the, and we discussed this as a board, it seemed like one of the advantages of raising this to $12 per month was just to differentiate between the permitted parking that we just created via the other resolution. Additionally, the thinking is that at $10 or $12 per month, these are not revenue generators for the village. These are ideally just covering costs. So I'd like to move that we accept this resolution to increase the price from $10 to $12 for the spots to the west of us here at Village Hall in the Village Muni Lot.
Second.
All in favor? Or no, roll call.
Dennis Henry.
Aye.
Jim Rogers.
Aye.
Tom Rocco.
Aye.
John Carr.
Aye.
And then Rebecca's excused.
And Ryan, do you have to do this form? Okay, cool.
So proposed changes regarding section 21223 of our zoning codes. I attended the ZBA meeting last night. So the planning board had suggested that we make some tweaks to the code that required every project go before the planning board for site plan when it involved a building permit. And the planning board had a suggestion to tweak that code a little bit. We've received feedback from members of the ZBA who had some additional thoughts, and during our discussion with the ZBA last night, I feel like instead of playing this ongoing game of telephone, I'd like to see us have like a task force or a subcommittee where we include 2 planning board folks, 2 ZBA folks, and 2 village board folks, as well as our planner, sit down and kind of hammer this out together, as opposed to just passing a document around that is sometimes tricky, to keep track of. This is sometimes fairly cerebral stuff that's tougher to wrap your mind around, and it might be more useful to do as a group.
Just get everyone in a room and wrestle it to the ground.
Yeah. So I was willing to volunteer to be part of this task force. If anyone else has anyone else also thinks that zoning code is sexy, that I encourage them to join us.
I'm liaison to ZBA, so I guess I would be a logical choice, but I would defer if Trustee Rocco, with his greater expertise, would want to sit through this session.
I had an earlier discussion this evening about this, and since another member of my family is going to be on this
Sign me up.
committee.
Sign me up.
Unless Dennis wants to do it.
I will defer to Dawn's
Thank you.
superior knowledge on the subject.
Okay, so I will make sure that group happens, and we wrestle that topic to the ground,
I
as
just want to
Don
assure,
described.
Don and the rest of the committee that I've already transferred my files to this other person in my family, so that she will have those accessible.
I hope you will be offended that for a moment there, I considered asking your wife to marry me, so you could take on this obligation, but I figure she's happy where she is.
So far.
Okay. Next item on this agenda is this Hudson River Estuary Program Local Stewardship Planning Grant for the town and the village. So our village planner identified an opportunity to pursue a grant for $45,000 that would help the town and the village with green infrastructure, capital improvement feasibilities. So this would be, getting money to work on this plan. Again, going back to green infrastructure, so this ties in with what our grant writer, Mark Blauer, was emphasizing as something that's very important if we're going to deal with some of our DEC consent orders. He really feels like green infrastructure solutions are important, and they must be important because the Environmental Protection Agency provided us with money to host a seminar, as I mentioned earlier, this fall. So the town at our last meeting agreed to support our application for this grant. So I just wanted our village board to allow me to sign off on the same letter of support. So I'd like to, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item, a recommendation from our building inspector, Bryant Arms, that the village consider the circumstances for an unsafe building at 5 Mulberry Street. I have that note from Bryant, and I felt the final paragraph was the key to understanding exactly what he is suggesting. Does anyone want to comment on what we're deliberating over here while I look?
I think there's been a fair amount of chatter on online with regard to this property, and I don't want to go there or get into any of that stuff. I would like to say that, speaking just for myself, I know there are people at this table who both helped dig the grave for the poor pets who perished at that tragedy. Other individuals at this table who helped cover that grave with dirt. So there are people on this board who have been very supportive and very personally involved in trying to remediate this tragedy as individuals. But I think we also have tonight at this table a responsibility as elected officials, and that's how I view this discussion tonight.
Right. I would just add that I have received several phone calls from residents of Huguenot Street who are strongly encouraging us to take action to get this site cleaned up ASAP. There are some environmental risks, especially with the threat of snowfall looming. This property at 5 Mulberry is close to the rail trail, which is close to wetlands all along the way. It's obviously close to the Walkill River. This is definitely an emergency-like situation that needs to be sorted out for a variety of reasons ASAP. So I'll just read from the paragraph, the final paragraph in the note that we received from Bryant Arms, our building inspector. Therefore, I'm requesting that you send a notice to the owner to appear before the village board at your next meeting. During that meeting, please hold a hearing, create written findings of fact, and issue an order based on those findings to properly demolish the unsafe building. Then, if the demolition is not properly completed within 10 days, cause the work to be done at the owner's expense. That would be in accordance with Section 90-5 of the Village Code, or the board may invoke 90-6 for an immediate remedy. So I'd like to suggest that we invite the property owner. Well, now we actually have a problem here in that we don't have a meeting until January.
I'm okay with adding this to next week based on the safety element and the timing involved.
Okay, so
I'm in full agreement with this. I do not believe that we should even have waited so long. This property is a danger.
Agreed.
This is not just a not nice looking place. This is a dangerous site, and it should be cleared of all of the rubble that's the remainder of a fire. It is not a safe area. And I believe we should send, we should maybe not invoke 90-6, but we should at least cite 96, suggesting that this property ought to be cleaned up immediately and not wait for the public hearing. But if it is
like
not
that idea
done,
better.
then we should have this person appear in, are you suggesting?
I agree with you, Tom. I do not think that we should wait if we have the option of not waiting.
Then,
Okay, so how does that work?
well, we can cite 90-6 and say that it is necessary to remediate this problem within the next, our next meeting is 7 days from now.
Right?
So within the next 5 days. Or you must appear according to 90-5 at the next board meeting.
Are we clear? And I'm not, do we need legally to hold a hearing, create written findings of fact, and issue an order before we can do that? It seems to, I'm guessing from the language here.
Because he says, or the board may invoke 96 for an immediate remedy.
Rather than giving 5 days and then adding it to the next meeting, let's say, give you 5 days, or we're invoking the immediate remedy, we will clean it up and we will send you a bill.
Okay, I would go for that. Saying that you have 5 days to clean it up, or we will invoke 90-6.
This fire was in the first week of October.
Yes, this fire,
Yes,
this is
been
no longer.
long overdue. This is right next to the rail trail. There's plenty of children with direct access, and with snow looming and the environmental concerns, there's no reason to wait.
Well, I was there with the code officer at the site not long after the fire, and I believe that the period of time that the homeowner had before there was possibility of legal action by the village expired on November 30th. So we're 8 days into that red zone. I would like to, I like I understand the 5-day thing, but if we do 7 days, there would be an opportunity for the homeowner to address and update the board, and hopefully prevent the invoking of the 96. So I might want to give 7 days rather than 5, just to allow the opportunity to address us and convince us that it's not required. That's just me.
Unfortunately, Don, 7 days from now we would be like at 9 o'clock on Wednesday night. So we would have to wait until our meeting was essentially over before we'd be able to do anything.
So let's do 6 days. So we're giving the property owner 6 days to clean the site up. If it's not cleaned up, then we should take action Wednesday night on the 16th, where we will clean it up at the owner's expense.
Well, we will invoke, let's say explicitly we'll invoke 90-6.
And then explain what that means
And
to the
explain
property.
what that means.
So Ryan, can you make sure this is communicated with the property owner first thing tomorrow morning?
Yes. Might I suggest that the building inspector help draft a letter that I believe is going to wind up coming from you, Mr. Mayor? Or maybe it'll come from all of us, but it's going to have to be, somebody's going to have to actually send this out ASAP.
Okay. Can you
And I
make sure?
believe- I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I believe that communication would need to be hand-delivered. I don't know there's any reliable way to communicate. I don't think there's a home phone. There's certainly no landline.
Right, so Ryan, can you work with Bryant to have that letter drafted and then work with the building department to deliver that letter tomorrow?
And I have a professional relationship with that building owner. She used to be my hairdresser or whatever, barber. And I would volunteer if there's any desire to have anyone from the board communicate or be an ambassador in this situation. I certainly would do it.
Do you want to work with Bryant in terms of getting that?
I have been working with Bryant.
I know, right, you have been, but do you want to continue to work with Bryant tomorrow as we're trying to get this notice in the property owner's hands?
I would be comfortable being the face of the board in this regard.
I'll join you if you'd like, Don.
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay. So we have nothing else on the agenda. I wanted to add one thing. This has been circulated via email, but a gentleman approached me who's on the town ENCB recently, the Town Environmental Board. I guess the village has been lacking in terms of having a representative go up to the county environmental committee meetings. So we need a person. We could appoint someone, one of the usual suspects. We could find someone totally new. But we should try to find an individual to go up to Stone Ridge once a month to represent the village at these environmental committee meetings.
I'm pretty sure those meetings are on Wednesdays, which rules us all out. Because I had wanted to attend when I was EPC chair, but I was interested in coming to these meetings, and so it can't be anyone here.
Ryan, so could you maybe let's broadcast the need for this individual. We're looking for volunteers from the village on the village website as well as the village Facebook page, just to see if we can get some interest. Everyone cool with that? Yep.
Yeah. And before we adjourn, I wanted to just request an agenda item for January. Maurice Whiteman Memorial.
An actual event, right? Or were you thinking just
discussion of if we want to have some sort of memorial, as has been discussed, such as naming a road or building a bridge or a statue, whatever it might be.
Should I say my communication?
Yeah, sure.
I communicated with Dawn that I had communicated with Maurice's widow, and she had consulted with her family, and they came to like the idea of having a street in the NBR named after Maurice. So I had proposed that as one item, as one possibility. The other was I think we had all mentioned or have mentioned at this table, a bench that might be named after Maurice. And so the family would prefer the street name.
So can we put that on the agenda for January? And rather than have the street, let's just say memorial, so
A
it is open to
memorial,
A
whatever
baseball
discussion we
field
want to have.
might be appropriate as well.
Yeah, they're not
that'd be pretty cool.
dictating anything to us, but they're just making, I asked and they told me.
Okay, motion to adjourn? Oh, thanks. Well, wait a minute, I don't know, can we do this if Rebecca didn't sign them? Or no,
The board can designate somebody else to sign them.
who wants to sit here and sign them? Well, I guess we can,
The one time, the only time I did it, I delivered them back the next day. I did not sit here after this meeting.
yeah, I actually like reading through them, that's how I identified a few kind of funky things that we were paying for, including that $35 basic charge to Central Hudson for electricity we're not using.
So,
It's worth actually paying attention to. But I think we can motion to approve these and then have someone do this.
that is what we did before.
Yeah.
I believe.
So, and then you seconded, all in favor, or we're good, we gotta do roll call. Aye. Everyone said aye, I think.
If you have to do a roll call, then you have
Then
to
you gotta
actually
say
call
it.
the roll.
Go ahead.
Dennis Young,
Aye.
Tim Rogers.
Aye.
Tom Rocco,
Aye.
Don Carr.
Aye.
Rebecca's excused. Who wants to read these? Dennis, I'm handing them to you.
Well, Tom got the wine when residents gave us wine. Maybe he should get the invoice.
I actually, by the way, I am still, I haven't drunk any of that wine. And we are going to have a little affair to greet them.
Okay, I heard about your Thanksgiving guests. I was concerned that maybe it was all gone.
You know what, I had to watch out because we had so many people.
So motion to adjourn? Or did
Second.
we already do that?
We're gone, we're out
Did
of
we
here.
already do that? We didn't. So, all in favor?
Aye.
What? Oh, is that what you said? I didn't hear what you were saying. I was